What up, YouTube? Back again with another video, and this is the best designed city in America. Let's go.
Few cities in the world protect their waterfront like Chicago. Almost 30 miles of parks and trails with nothing private to block the view.
Chicago,
in every
man.
other major American city, the waterfront got sold off decades ago to the highest bidder. Developers carved up the coastline and blocked it behind gates and buildings. But in Chicago, someone decided the lakefront belonged to everyone, and that decision stuck for over a century. Chicago is massive, home to nearly 3 million people in the city proper and almost 10 million in the surrounding metro area. And yet, you can navigate the entire city by just counting blocks because the street grid is so organized that addresses tell you exactly where everything is.
That's a big city.
So how did this happen? How did one city manage to get so many things right while almost every other major American city got them wrong? What makes Chicago so radically different? To uncover what makes Chicago so special, you have to go back to the 19th century. On October 8, 1871, a fire started on the southwest side of the city. Within 2 days, it had destroyed 3 square miles of buildings, leaving about 100,000 people homeless and the entire downtown in ruins.
That's right. There was a lot of fires back then, destroying a lot of cities. And Chicago was one of those that suffered during that time.
Most cities that face disasters like this rebuild quickly, throwing up whatever structures they can afford to get people back inside and businesses reopened. They patch things together and try to move on, but quick fixes rarely rebuild a city's spirit. Philadelphia never fully recovered from their great fires. San Francisco took decades to rebuild after 1906, proof that total destruction usually marks decline rather than rebirth. Chicago found itself in a completely different situation. The fire had wiped away the old city and left behind something architects and planners almost never get: a blank canvas. There were no existing structures to work around and no tangled mess of old decisions that couldn't be undone. The city immediately banned wooden construction downtown and required everything to be rebuilt with steel and stone. It was a statement about what kind of city Chicago was going to become: permanent, modern, and built to last. Architects from across the country rushed to Chicago because they saw an opportunity to build something completely new from the ground up. But having a blank canvas only matters if someone has a vision for what to create on it.
So who did?
38 years after the fire, an architect named Daniel Burnham published the Plan of Chicago. This was
Hold on. So you said Daniel Burnham, he was responsible for this. His last name has the word burn in it. He was built for this. He was born for this, man.
one of the first fully developed master plan for an entire region in American history. Burnham imagined an entire city decades into the future, anticipating future challenges and creating solutions in advance. Burnham had a philosophy that summed up his whole approach: make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. He believed cities needed grand visions to rally behind, something beautiful and functional that would inspire people to build. Most city plans get published with enthusiasm and then quietly shelved because they're too expensive or too complicated. Burnham's plan broke that pattern. It gave Chicago an identity and a shared vision of what the city could become if everyone worked together over generations. The plan established core principles that would guide Chicago's development.
Okay.
Cities needed organized structure instead of chaotic growth. Beauty mattered as much as practical function. Public space was essential for everyone regardless of wealth. And planning decades ahead was far better than reacting to immediate needs. The remarkable thing is that Chicago built most of what Burnham envisioned, turning his vision into the framework that guided the city's growth for over a century.
Right, that makes sense, and that's why it looks so organized and nice the way how it is. Structure, spacing, it matters, especially if you want to minimize fires again. You don't want to quickly go with chaos building. And so this matters. This does matters.
And it all started with the most important element of any city: the streets themselves. Chicago has one of the tightest, most organized street grids of any major city in America. The entire city spreads out from a single intersection where State Street crosses Madison Street, and from there, every block represents 100 addresses. If someone lives 48 blocks north of downtown, their address is exactly that distance. You can calculate how far away a place is just by looking at the address numbers. Compare this to older American cities, where streets curve randomly, change names for no apparent reason, or dead-end unexpectedly. Boston's streets follow old cow paths from colonial times. Lower Manhattan's financial district is a tangle of narrow lanes that made sense in the 1600s, but confuse everyone today. Chicago, rebuilt from scratch, avoided all that chaos. Another detail about Chicago's
So that itself is a game changer for people's lifestyles. Easier to navigate in a city when the graphs are just equal. You know, you don't have to worry about weird lines of like curves and dead ends, like they said.
Built from scratch, avoided all that chaos. Another detail about Chicago's streets is that there are alleys running through the middle of almost every residential block. Garbage collection, deliveries, and garage access all happen from the back of buildings instead of the front. Streets are cleaner and more pleasant because all these activities happen out of sight. The grid does have a few diagonal streets cutting through at odd angles, but they're old Native American trading routes that the city incorporated because they already existed and people had been using them for generations. So, a perfectly organized street grid may make navigation intuitive and transit efficient, but even that couldn't contain a city growing this fast, so Chicago built upward. After the fire, Chicago became the birthplace of the modern skyscraper. Before Chicago's architects started experimenting, tall buildings faced a significant limitation. Walls had to hold up all the weight. Building 10 stories high using traditional masonry meant ground floor walls had to be so thick that interior space became almost useless. The taller you built, the thicker the walls needed to be, which defeated the entire purpose. Chicago architects solved this with a simple but radical idea.
Steel skeleton. Yes. Okay.
Using a steel frame as the building's skeleton. Walls could now serve as protective shells instead of load-bearing structures, and buildings could rise much higher while maintaining useful interior space on every floor. In 1885, the Home Insurance Building was completed using this method, and it's widely considered the world's first true skyscraper. The innovation spread worldwide because it solved a universal problem every growing city faced. Nearly every tall building constructed today uses some version of the steel frame method that Chicago pioneered. The city invented the modern way of building upward. The 1893 World's Fair showcased Chicago's architectural innovations to an international audience and established the city's reputation for pushing boundaries in urban design. Yet even as Chicago was building higher than ever before, some of the most important decisions involved what the city refused to build on. Daniel Burnham had one priority that mattered more than anything else in his plan: protecting the lakefront from private development. He believed Lake Michigan's shoreline was Chicago's greatest natural asset, and that it belonged to everyone, not just wealthy property owners. In most American cities, the most valuable land near water got sold off to private interests. New York built a wall.
Man, bump private interests, man. Yeah, it's selfish. But no, I like his philosophy on making it for the public, right? You know what I'm saying? So the city, the public benefits from it instead of just private interests. You know, it's just, you gotta have something for the people, and also to make it valuable in the city to bring more value, you know, more tourists, more, just so much more things you can have as far as resource. So yeah, it's no brainer.
Piers and warehouses along its waterfront. Miami Beach lined its oceanfront with luxury hotels and exclusive condos. Even where beaches technically remained public, like in Los Angeles, Development blocked access, and limited parking made it difficult for ordinary residents to reach the water.
That's crazy.
Through Burnham's vision and decades of civic legal battles, Chicago locked in its lakefront as permanent public space.
Decades of legal battles to win this for the man. Shout out to him, man. Burnham, he did it for the culture, man. Come on, man. He cared. That's what you get when you have people who care for society. You know what I'm saying? It was like, hey, y'all, I get it. Y'all got y'all money. Y'all want these, but look, we gotta let the society have this right here. And he did. Permanent.
Today, you can walk, bike, or sit by the water for 25 of Chicago's 29 miles of shoreline without encountering a single gate or private property sign.
And this is good because when you're in the city, you want some type of nature around you, right? A park, a public river around you. We could go jog around, and it's just, it helps, man. It helps clear your mind. People in the city need things like this. You know, I'm fortunate for where I live at, that's a lot of nature. But, you know, this is a big deal for people who live in the city. If you're from Chicago, let me know. You know what I'm saying? Let me know, because you live in this, right? So let me know.
The difference is staggering when you compare it to almost any other major American city. The Chicago River received similar treatment over decades, transforming from an industrial channel lined with warehouses into a public promenade where people could enjoy being near the water. The city adopted Urbs in Horto as its motto, meaning city in a garden. And this slogan shaped priorities and development decisions for generations. Still, beautiful public spaces only matter if people can reach them, and this is where Chicago's timing gave it another critical advantage.
Okay.
Chicago's layout was established long before cars dominated American life, and this gave the city an enormous advantage.
Oh,
shoot. The street grid, downtown density, and public transit system were all designed when people moved around by walking, streetcars, and trains. When automobiles became common, Chicago adapted to accommodate them, but didn't tear itself apart to prioritize them above everything else. After World War II, most American cities rebuilt themselves around cars. Highways plowed through established neighborhoods. Downtown areas were...
That is horrible. Highways by downtown neighborhoods? Oh, so much traffic. Look at that. We still have that to this day, man.
Demolished and replaced with massive parking lots. Public transit systems were abandoned under the assumption that everyone would drive everywhere. Houston built endless suburbs with no transit options. Los Angeles created sprawl so extreme that hour-long commutes became completely normal. Atlanta designed a metro area where owning a car was absolutely necessary for basic activities like buying groceries or getting to work. Chicago took a different path. The elevated train system known as the L connects neighborhoods throughout the city in ways that make living without a car genuinely feasible. Chicago maintained relatively fewer freeways compared to other major cities, while places like Houston and LA were building massive highway networks. This decision, made decades ago, continues to define what makes Chicago different from almost every other major American city.
Who lives in this? Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. That's too much. That's too much traffic. That's like an hour and a half, 2 hours traffic right there.
Everywhere else, cities chased growth without guidance, proving how unusual Chicago's approach was. Houston has virtually no zoning laws, which means factories can be built directly next to residential neighborhoods with no restrictions or planning oversight. The entire metro area sprawls outward with almost no public transit, making the city impossible to navigate without a car. Phoenix spreads across hundreds of square miles of desert, prioritizing endless expansion over concentrated development. And Los Angeles has a street grid that covers an enormous area, but the city is almost wholly car dependent. New York City has incredible density and an extensive subway system, but it grew organically over centuries without the kind of comprehensive regional planning that Chicago implemented. Chicago had something others didn't: a catastrophic disaster that forced a complete reset, paired with visionary leadership that created a bold plan people wanted to follow. Burnham's approach became a model that urban planners worldwide studied and referenced.
Wow.
The Plan of Chicago demonstrated that comprehensive regional planning could work if a city committed to following through on it over generations. Chicago became the best designed city in America because the Great Fire created an opportunity. Burnham's plan gave Chicago a framework that balanced beauty with function, public benefit with economic growth, and organized development with natural spaces that everyone could enjoy.
That is interesting. It kind of makes me actually want to go and visit Chicago. I haven't been to Chicago in so long, since I was like freaking elementary, you know what I'm saying? So, and that when it snowed, so I didn't really get to fully experience being there and explore the city. But yeah, definitely was dope information, learning how they actually structure their buildings in their city after that hit of big giant fire that took out the whole city. I didn't know that. And I mean, I was aware that there were a lot of cities that were on fire during that time, but I didn't know Chicago was one of them that went through that. So it was dope learning something about the history of Chicago and how they persevered and built something phenomenal. Shout out to Daniel Burnham. Shout out to him, man. Also for making that river public. Yeah. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed, man, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. We make dope reactions over here and learn something new and just experience cool stuff over here. Just, you got anything for me to check out? Let me know in the comment section. I'll check it out. See you in the next one. Peace.